From time to time throughout history, man has relied on guidance from beyond. At the times of greatest need, man has realized his smallness and turned to a greater power. As mankind courts self-destruction in this modern world, he has a choice. Does he continue to grope through the darkness on his own? Or does he accept the wisdom that's offered from the spiritual realms? It's my pleasure to introduce to you the most unique experience in the metaphysical and psychic field, the Council, deep catatonic trance psychic William Allen Lapar, and Saul. The cornerstone of this experience is the Council. The Council consists of 12 spirit entities who have offered their service to us. Though they once walked on the earth as we do, they evolved beyond the need for physical bodies and exist in one of the highest spiritual realms ever to contact mankind. To understand how the Council can communicate with us from the celestial realms, one must be introduced to the deep catatonic trance process and the remarkable abilities of psychic William Allen Lapar. The trances of Mr. Lapar are among the rarest paranormal experiences known to modern man. The deep catatonic trance is an altered state of consciousness through which Mr. Lapar allows the Council to speak to mankind. Mr. Lapar's trance is unique in that his body becomes completely rigid and immobile, and his body functions slow to the minimum level required to sustain life. Mr. Lapar's deep catatonic trance has been authenticated by medical doctors, psychiatrists, and psychologists. Mr. Lapar's first trance, which was a private trance, occurred in 1970. Since then, he has received over 1 million words from the Council. His first public trance celebrated this achievement. Unlike other channelers, Mr. Lapar waited until a substantial body of information had accumulated to ensure that the trance information was accurate, consistent, and uncolored by his personality before making the trance available to the general public. This accuracy and consistency has been verified through computer-aided textual analysis. Saul is a non-profit volunteer organization composed of individuals from all walks of life. The Saul organization is responsible for preserving and presenting the trance information to all who wish to enhance their spiritual perspective. All of this information is recorded and transcribed by the Saul Associates, who are directly responsible for ensuring the integrity of the trance information. Textual analysis is accomplished through a network of computers with a capacity in excess of 140 megabytes. The computer network processes and cross-references the enormous amount of channeled information received from the Council. Saul's computers are more powerful than those required to operate a metropolitan newspaper. Another activity of Saul is the Research and Study Group. These volunteers formulate and pose questions to the Council on specific topics. One such topic, life after death, took 5 years to complete. The wisdom contained in the 1 million words of the Council's trance communications covers a fascinating array of topics. Life after death, the ancient civilizations of Mu, Lemuria, and Atlantis, the spiritual reality of the animal kingdom, the origin of mankind, the power of sound and music, mysteries of the universe, the time-space continuum, startling insights into AIDS, and much more. This intriguing information from the Council is now available to the public through Saul's membership program and through lectures and workshops given by Mr. Lapar. Saul's membership program offers the public the opportunity to read unedited transcripts from the trance communications by borrowing trance lending library files. Saul also publishes a quarterly newsletter as well as numerous books, and tapes. At this point, I'd like to explain in some detail the process of the deep catatonic trance. The Lapar trances are truly extraordinary. His movements to the trance site are purely instinctual. Before he even lies down, he's in an altered state of consciousness. To the observer, little appears to be occurring once he's in position, but within the body there's much activity. During this induction phase, and increasing throughout the trance, twitching of the closed eyelids and rapid eye movement can be observed. Also, during this induction phase, there are chemical changes in the entire system, and in the brain, alterations in the electrical impulses that have been likened to a violent electrical storm. One of the most visible and unusual aspects of the deep catatonic trance is Mr. Lapar's hyperventilation. This rapid, deep breathing occurs for two reasons. First, to clear the lungs of any possible congestion, and second, to alter the blood chemistry. What occurs within the brain at this point is similar to a grand mal seizure. This is a short-circuiting between the right and left lobes of the brain, which causes a seizure-like rigidity in the body. After this occurs, the connection between Mr. Lapar and the council is complete. An additional period is required to secure the link in the safest manner. At this point, the council is now ready to speak. The council gives an opening statement, and then a question and answer period begins. At the end of the trance, the council breaks the state of coexistence with Mr. Lapar. For several minutes, Mr. Lapar will be disoriented and have extreme difficulty regaining the use of his motor functions. He remembers nothing from the time induction began until the moment he awakens from the trance state. In order for Mr. Lapar to become aware of the information revealed by the council, the SAL organization will replay tapes of the trance for him. If you or your organization is interested in further information about the council, Mr. Lapar, his lectures and workshops, SAL, the membership program, or for the opportunity to co-produce a trance, write to SAL, Post Office Box 2276, North Canton, Ohio, 44720, for specific information and requirements. And now sit back and allow the wisdom of the council to stimulate your very being and broaden your horizons. Ladies and gentlemen, SAL proudly presents a very special experience. Much work and 18 months of preparation will soon reach their fulfillment. The conference site has been secured and prepared. All are awaiting the arrival of deep trance psychic William Allen Lapar. It's now 7 a.m., and as Mr. Lapar's van approaches, the last-minute preparations are completed. A room has been prepared for Mr. Lapar where he can relax and meditate in solitude until it's time for the trance. Later, his wife will keep him company while he meditates and prays until he enters his pre-trance altered state of consciousness. In contrast to the quiet of Mr. Lapar's room is the activity elsewhere. Preparations are being made by the Saw crew to set up the sound equipment and lighting, and to complete many other tasks. The dais on which Mr. Lapar will lie, and the protective screen used to guard Mr. Lapar's auric field, is assembled by members of Saw. Guests are eager to complete their registration and find their seats. Many people have arrived early so that they can be sure to view the entire trance induction. In his room, Mr. Lapar has quieted the conscious mind and has reached an altered state of consciousness. At this point, he's unaware of what is going on around him. His actions are purely instinctual. The ballroom quickly fills as the last guests arrive and hurry to be seated. It's approaching the time for Mr. Lapar to enter. A security team is close by to protect Mr. Lapar from harm. Because of his altered state of consciousness, he must rely on his security team for protection. Nancy, Mr. Lapar's wife, arrives to sit with her husband for the last few minutes of the pre-induction period. When her husband is ready, she will leave the room. This is a very tense moment for the Saul organization. Mr. Lapar must arrive at the dais without interruption. It's imperative that he not come in physical contact with anyone while he's in this altered state of consciousness. The security team is notified that Mr. Lapar is ready. Mr. Lapar quickly exits his room and moves toward the conference room. He must not be touched. His progress must not be impeded. As Mr. Lapar lies down on the dais, he positions himself in a north-south alignment. He adjusts his clothing, which is all cotton, and completes other minor adjustments of which he is unaware. In approximately 15 minutes, the hyperventilation will begin. first indication that the Council has arrived is the hyperventilation, the deep breathing that clears the lungs and alters the blood chemistry. Here, Mr. Reese explains to the audience what is transpiring.
Ladies and gentlemen, the hyperventilation is about to begin. The purpose of the hyperventilation is first to help clear the lungs of any congestion, and more importantly, to alter the chemistry of the blood. What will occur within Mr. Lapar's brain is similar to a grand mal seizure. It's comparable to a violent electrical storm occurring within the brain. There is a short-circuiting of the right and left lobes of the brain. At the very moment that the short-circuiting occurs, you will see the involuntary muscular extension of the left foot. This indicates that the consul has made connection with Mr. Lapar. After the seizure or electrical disturbance has completed, the foot will relax. A brief settling-in period is then necessary so that the consul can secure the link in the safest manner. Hyperventilation has begun. The blood chemistry is being altered. When it reaches the proper point, the seizure between the right and left lobes of the brain will begin. Please put your attention on the left foot. When it extends, the seizure will begin. The foot has extended. The seizure has begun within the brain. This is the actual link-up point. The foot is now relaxed. The consul is now present in a state of coexistence with Mr. Lapar.
The link with the Council has been secured. In another 12 to 15 minutes, the Council will begin to speak. The Council is introduced by the trance moderator, Mr. David Reese. The dialogue between the physical world and the spiritual world now begins.
Welcome to the Million Word Celebration, commemorating an unprecedented achievement, the channeling of more than 1 million words of spiritual insight and guidance. The source of that information, the consul, is now prepared to give us their opening message. We recommend that you pay particularly close attention to their opening and closing remarks. You will find their remarks both inspirational and instructive. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the consul.
May the peace and the joy of the Infinite Father be upon you all. And may his light shine down upon you, around you, and within each of you. This is our standard opening blessing at all of the communications. We ask that each of you accept this blessing in goodwill. To begin this day, let us explain a little of ourselves, who we are, and what we are. In order to get a better picture of who we are, you need some information. What lies beyond this material manifestation or your earthly lives? Originally, when all was created, and then a need came for the material manifestation, the divine essence, the infinite Father, the God of all, established what can simply be called, or best be called, the God-made heavenly realms. Once his creations began to work their will, it was a need then to create a second heavenly realm. Since those souls or entities or conscious state beings lost a degree of awareness, and in their confusion, they began to create their own heavens. Their activities brought a need for a waiting place. That today is known as the man-made heavenly realm. When one does not do the best they can, and that is all that is required of them, then they find a need of their own decision to go to a place that can easily be described as a reviewing station and a re-evaluation of who they are and what they are. Then they must, through those concepts that they have created in their earthly sojourn, must work their way back into the material through the process of reincarnation. But if in living your life you have done the best you could with what you have, then you make yourself eligible for the God-made heavenly realms. All decisions as to what state you will be in after leaving the physical manifestation or your earthly lives will be made by you and you alone. This divine essence does not judge you whether you are good or bad, whether you are kind or unkind. That judgment is left to you, because within each of you is a divine spark that contains the Christ consciousness. And when you leave your physical body, you will then examine your entire life, and you will decide whether you need more in the area of growth through the material manifestation, or whether you have made yourself eligible to grow beyond and without a material form. If you choose to grow beyond and without the material form, you will find yourself in the God-made heavenly realms. In that area, which was originally created by the divine, you have three basic levels of growth: the spirit level, the angelic level, and the celestial level. The celestial level can be easily compared to the portico that surrounds the house of the divine. Now, this is purely symbolic, but it is something that you can relate to. It is just before you enter the divine presence. This celestial level is where we exist. Never in the history of mankind has this level spoken to man. All sources of information in the past, at the present time, and in the future will come from the man-made realms. In this God-made heavenly realm, our task is to act as a counsel, to give suggestions to your perplexing problems. We are not here to tell you what to do. We are not here to tell you how to live your life. But we are here to offer suggestions, to encourage you to use the God-given mind that you have, to use the God-given will, to think and to grow, to open yourself up so that the godly state that lies within the very core of your being can come out. For each of you have a speck or spark of the divine in them. What is the nature of your reality? Do you just exist alone, as some philosophies say, that you create your own personal reality, that all that you experience is of your making? No. If it were so simple, but it is not. And if that were the case, then why would so many individuals, so many souls, so many entities create lives of hardship and sadness? What you see is reality as you understand it. But it is not a personal reality or an individual reality. In other words, all those individuals that you must deal with day in and day out, whether they are your spouse or your children or casual acquaintances, are not figments of your imagination, or are not entities that you created for your own growth. But they are entities in their own, just as you are. Reality is a collection of all of you creating together, not as individuals, but as members of an orchestra. You are in concert with each other. The material manifestation of the earthly life is the opportunity to work with other entities in the growth process. It is a giving and a taking. It is a sharing. Why are some lives so filled with problems? Why are some lives filled with so much sadness and sorrow? Why is it some people never seem to go anyplace? They seem to stand still. Let us give you a little example of how life works. Although some of you may find this very hard to believe, initially when you made all the spiritual agreements and contracts to experience life with those around you, your life was planned out so that it would be filled with peace, contentment, happiness, and joy. If this be the case, then why are so many lives contrary to this? Picture your life as a lake, as smooth and quiet as a mirror, piece of glass. Sometime, someplace, at some experience in your life, you reached a crossroads where a decision had to be made. A decision was made. But the decision was not as good as it could have been. And so this caused a ripple on the surface and slightly distorted the clarity of it. So as life progressed, then another crossroads came. Another decision had to be made. The decision was made not through the clarity of the lake or the pool as it was originally, but now that decision is made through that ripple effect. And so the clarity of sight is not there. And again, a wrong decision is made, causing a greater degree of ripples, more ripples, less clarity, less quiet, less calm, less clear. And as life goes on, then each decision is made through this distortion, through this lack of clarity, till finally this peaceful, placid lake, this mirror, is totally distorted. All clarity gone. This is how life becomes a trial. This is how hardships come into being. Once the lake becomes so distorted, then decisions are no longer really made, but instead of decisions, they become reactions to emotions and to situations. Reactions to emotions and situations. How does one begin to correct the situation? How can one return back to that peace, that calm, that still lake? One must begin to think and then act, as opposed to reacting. To change your life, you must begin to act instead of react. What is necessary then to begin to act in a more godly way? A keystone in spiritual growth or development is this: you cannot grow one iota if you do not love yourself. The problem with the world today is that it does not love itself. It loves things, material possessions, but the individual creations of the divine within life do not love themselves. They have lost that insight that they once had to their true value. So the first step one must take is to begin to love themselves, not in an egotistical way, but in a godly way. Then one must begin to respect themselves, to have self-esteem. Again, not in an egotistical way, but in a godly way. You must remember that there is a value to you, regardless of how lacking in love you are, or how many things you have done that you are not proud of. There still is a value to you. You have something to offer to mankind that only you can offer. No one else has that ability, that quality, that presence to offer. You are a unique individual, and only you can fulfill your mission in life. No one can fulfill it for you. So in that sense, you are extremely important in all of creation. You are of true value because you have something to give. Don't worry what it may be, but think of giving of yourself. Create a self-image for yourself. Begin to think of yourself as a better person than what you presently think of yourself. Again, not in an egotistical manner, but in the sense of having a respect for yourself, knowing that you do have something to offer that no one else can give. So to change your life, to make it more productive, to give you more in life of what you want, to bring a spiritual development or growth to yourself, first love yourself. Have a self-respect, a self-esteem for yourself. And then create an image in your mind of yourself. Create a positive image of yourself. A helping hand or an essential aspect of spiritual growth is something that your world today dislikes. Most of the world today feels this thing is not good, is old-fashioned, is unworthy. What is this thing? It is discipline. In your society today, the word discipline is a vile word. It's dirty. It's unacceptable. Your society feels that discipline means to do without. This shows a lack of wisdom and insight, because discipline does not mean do without. Discipline means gain control of yourself so that you can have all that you wish in life, so that you can benefit from all experiences, so that you can have a life of peace, of joy, of happiness, so that you can have spiritual growth and all the material things in life that you wish. Discipline does not mean to do without. Discipline means to take control of yourself. Give yourself a direction in life and follow that direction by making conscious, well thought out decisions. Don't react, but act. Gain control of your life. Gain control of yourself. Think. about each challenge that comes to your life, each crossroads that you come to. Discipline means to gain all that you wish to gain. It doesn't mean to do without. Those things that you can control, wonderful. Control them. Those faults that you may have that you cannot control, at least with discipline, you are able to practice a degree of moderation. And so, that which you cannot control, at least moderate it to a degree. The destiny that you have once you leave the material manifestation is not measured by how many good things you have done as opposed to how many bad things you have done. But it is measured by the true heart's desire. There are many things in life that you do that you wish you hadn't done, that you don't seem to be able to get full control on. Will that hamper you from the God-made heavenly realms? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If the circumstances in life have been such that you are not capable of certain things, does this withhold you from the God-made heavenly realms? No. What will allow you entrance into the God-made heavenly realms is when you ask yourself, how much did I do? How much did I really try? The answer that you give yourself will determine which of the heavenly realms you will go to. This divine essence does not judge you. This divine God does not judge you. He does not weigh your good faults and your bad faults. He accepts you just as you are, all the good in you and all the bad in you, all the positive and all the negative. But you see, deep in you is a God in the making, a rediscovery of self, taking that divine essence, that divine spark, that spiritual electricity, and bringing it into the totality of your consciousness, your soul, your physical life, and allowing it to manifest to those around you. That is what life is about. A quality life or a spiritual life doesn't depend on how much you have. It depends on how much you have given of yourself. A few points or steps in expressing that godliness that lies within you is to be able to love others without judgment. To be able to accept the need to love without anything asked in return. To love without any strings attached. This is a spiritual love. Another love that you must attempt to practice is the love that you have for your family, for your loved ones, for your spouses, for your children, for your parents. And that is a love of taking care of, nurturing. Another form of love is what is commonly called brotherly love. But it also indicates a friendship love, a respect for other individuals, and a concern for other individuals. There's still another love, and that is a community love or communal love. In this type of love, it is a reaching out. It is becoming active in community projects that uplift the community, that benefit the community, that adds to society as a whole. If you take these different forms of love and attempt to practice them in your life, if you begin to think and act upon a decision as opposed to a reaction, your life will begin to improve immeasurably, because you will have begun to realize your true spiritual potential. You will begin to realize that with all your good aspects, with all your positive aspects, and with all of your not so positive aspects, you have a uniqueness to give to mankind. Your mission in life, and all have a mission, is to offer yourself, your love, to your fellow man. Spiritual growth is not a way of life that asks you to do without, but it is a way of life that asks you to give, so that there is a greater room within to receive. Matter, creation, life, the earth, is in existence because of a consciousness. Your life is in existence because of a consciousness that you have. Matter can be looked upon as the effects, and consciousness is the cause. To change your life into something more positive, filled with greater joy and peace, change your consciousness ever so little, if that is the best you can do, and your life will improve. Your happiness will be assured. Your joy and your peace will be yours. Spiritual growth, and this is an important statement, cannot be gained through the knowledge that you have or the wisdom that you have. It cannot be lost because you may have a lack of knowledge or wisdom. Spiritual growth is gained only by what you do with what you have. This divine essence will accept you as you are if you will only allow that to happen. We thank you. We're ready for questions.
Thank you, Consul. It's now time to begin the question and answer session.
In your opening statement, you referred to our lives as being a lake that has been disturbed by our mistakes. When we come back, are we trying to change things so that the lake smooths out? Is that what you were referring to?
It's not necessary to wait till you come back. You can still the lake to a degree in this present experience or in this present life. You must remember there is a portion of the spiritual cycle that is now in play. This is what might be referred to as a bridge segment of what most people refer to as the New Age or the Golden Age or the Age of Light. You're not fully into it yet. You're still in the bridge portion of it. And during this particular time, karma takes on a new aspect, or as we have said in the past, the new karma, which means that you do not have to correct all your karmic debt from the past. What you must do to overcome the karmic picture that you have created and the need for any other reincarnations is simply live this life the best you can with what you have. It's not necessary to undergo the old practice of karma, which is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. In this bridge or portion of the spiritual cycle, a new aspect has been added so that it is not necessary to wipe the slate completely clean. What is required is make the effort to do so and then forget about the rest. Now, this can't be a one-time effort or a two-time effort. As you live the rest of your life, you must constantly try to do the best you can. Oh, there will be times when you just won't do it. But spiritual success is guaranteed to those who fall and will pick themselves back up. So if you try and you fall back into old habits or old ways, don't stay there. Try again, start over, and keep this process up. Then when you leave the material manifestation and you ask yourself, did you do the best you could? Your answer will then be yes. And you will move on to a whole new realm of growth and development. Very well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
We're finished with this one.
What does the Council think of A Course in Miracles, and do they consider it channeled material from Jesus Christ?
In our opening statement, in order to allow all forms and sources of information their due, in other words, there are purposes for all the different channeled information. Do you understand that?
I think so.
It is not for us to say that this source of information or some other source of information is good or bad. There are channeled bits of information or philosophies that are totally fraudulent, that were constructed purely for the financial gain in them. Now, we are not saying that this Course in Miracles is that type of information. The only statement we will make about that information is that it cannot be channeled from the true Jesus Christ. That doesn't necessarily mean that it does not have a value. That happens to be one of the better philosophies or concepts available to man today. A bit complicated and a little more involved than what is actually necessary, but this serves those individuals who feel they must carry a heavier load than what is necessary. Do you understand?
Yes.
Does that answer the question sufficiently?
Yes, thank you.
Very well.
Will we be contacted by our space brothers, and will we be ready to be publicly contacted and acknowledge them in the next 5 years?
Well, your space brothers are not all what they are cracked up to be very honest. You must remember that just as the planet Earth have decent human beings and some human beings that are not so decent, so do those who live in other galaxies. To accept all of those entities or beings as space brothers, indicating that they are more highly evolved than you or more spiritual, is foolishness. You must be careful in dealing with the extraterrestrial. Don't assume that because they have a greater knowledge, technically, that they are more advanced spiritually. Are all of you ready for communication or a relationship with entities from other galaxies? You're as much ready for them as you are ready for someone from India or Asia or Africa. Society as a whole would be much more tolerant of a relationship with extraterrestrials, but the governments would not be quite as happy or as tolerant. This would be based on a fear of the loss of power and control. Have you made contact? Well, we feel that it should be common knowledge that there have been many contacts, including contacts with your government and the government of Russia. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Very well.
Will another savior figure or God-man soon appear on Earth? And if so, where was this person born?
There's no need for another God figure or God-man at this particular time. What man must do before that comes into experience is that the overall consciousness of mankind must be raised, and raised through this bridge period that we talked about earlier, where the new karma is in effect. Once that is established, a greater degree of consciousness or spirituality, then that would lay way for a extended version of the Christ consciousness. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
We wouldn't expect something like that in this lifetime of anyone here, unless all of you decide to get to work on doing the best you can. You must remember, when it comes to life, you have predetermined what you will experience in life. Before you came in, you agreed with all those that you will come in contact with what you will experience. Once you come into that life, then things can change, because each has a free will, and each can breach those spiritual contracts at will. Now, if a greater number of individuals were to decide to get down to business and start giving and caring more, then in this lifetime or in this generation, great changes could be made. But it is the sum total of all that will determine what the future will be and how quickly the new age will actually be upon you all. Very well. Next question.
Yes, in your opening remarks, you made the statement, you said which heavenly realm you will go to, inferring that there are others, and you've piqued my curiosity. Would you comment on that, please?
There are two different heavenly realms, or two different states of existence for you when you leave the material manifestation. The original, that was planned by the divine when he saw that his creations weren't doing what they should, was what is referred to, or what we refer to as the God-made heavenly realms. There you exist in a state of evolvement that is quite alien to the word structure or the vocabulary that man has. There's no way of truly describing it except in terms that may prove somewhat confusing, such as existing in a true conscious state that you really are, and in other words, not utilizing the illusion of a physical body or limits. Only in the spirit level of the God-made heavenly realms does an entity utilize the illusion of a physical body only to better understand the consequences of the entity's action. Once they move beyond that level, then they are in sufficient development to be able to realize and utilize the true being they are, and that is a conscious state being without a physical body or without physical limitations as you understand it. They are then able to merge with other conscious state beings in complete union and unison without losing their unique personality or their individualized personalities. This sharing that goes on, or this merging that goes on, actually makes your personality that much more unique, because then you become aware of all that the other individual has or has learned, and those become properties of yourself. And of course, when you move from the angelic level then into the celestial level, this whole activity is magnified thousands upon thousands of times, so that you are not only a conscious state being and you fully accept it, you fully utilize it, but you also realize the full creative potential that lies within each and every one of you. And you exercise that for the good of all. These exercises in godliness then move to the other levels that are below the celestial level. And so it is a total giving and sharing of all the entities in the God-made heavenly realms. The other realm that was created by all of you and your predecessors, or from the beginning of man's history, is what we called the man-made heavenly realms. There, those realms develop according to man's conscious beliefs, so that once you make entrance there, you enter in on the spiritual level. You are very much involved in the physical illusion. Your life is reviewed over and over again. You are very intently involved in those review processes, and you see it as a reliving of your life. Once you move beyond that, then you go into the next level, the guidance level. You then begin to have to cooperate with other entities there, some that you have lived with in a particular lifetime, others who you have not lived with. You must then live according to your belief systems that you have created in the previous lifetime. A simple explanation. If you were a Baptist, then you would have to live according to those standards, or some variation of it, depending on how good of a Baptist you were, in those realms. So there would be many individuals who would be of like thought and like belief. There you would have to work through that process, that belief system, and then eventually work to an area or a realization where you could accept reincarnation. At that point, then, you would have to evaluate the available situations to see if they would be of service to you, and then hope that you would have the opportunity to reincarnate. Does that answer the question?
Well, kind of.
It's a bit much for one shot, but what seems to need clarification?
I'd like to thank the council for that. I guess the clarification that I'm asking for is the astral realm. Is that of our creation, and is that not part of the heavenly realm?
Well, astral realms, those terms are just terms. Those are words put on experiences that all of you have at one time or another in your life, but that doesn't make the area that firm or that real. There are many philosophies that say you travel in the astral realm, or when you die, part of you goes to the astral. This is all man's concept. When you die, you either go to one heavenly realm or the other heavenly realm. There, you will go through a state of existence that will allow you to reevaluate your life. Astral realms are really the simplest way to explain the evolvement of an astral realm is that it is a state of consciousness that some people experience, and in their inability to explain it, or their inability to realize what they have experienced, they like to dress up with tags and names and what have you. So it is actually a state of consciousness, not a state that you exist in after you leave the material manifestation. You must remember that all true spiritual realities, all spiritual truths are manifested in all the major religious concepts of man through the very beginning of time. The problem that arises is that one man will call the same thing by one name, while the other man will be talking about the same thing and use a different name. And the arrogance and the self-centeredness of these people cause them to argue and feel as though they are not discussing the same thing. So what part of our task is to help you realize that many times, many different belief systems talk about the same thing, using different terminology. So it is actually a matter of semantics. A matter of semantics. Very well, the next question.
Consul, it's approaching the scheduled time to bring the question and answer session to a close. Would you be willing to accept one more question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. Do we choose our parents before we come in to the earth plane?
Very much so. Before you are born, before your parents are born, at a time, and again you must understand that time as you experience it, in seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years, that is purely related to the material manifestation or to the earth plane. Time in the spiritual realms is more simply explained as the all now, but that can add confusion too. So that you don't have a linear concept or experience of time. That's the simplest way to explain time in the hereafter. At some point, you and your parents will agree on a spiritual level, in a spiritual contract, to make available to you a physical vehicle wherein you can experience life. At that time, there are certain parameters set on the life that you are willing to accept, both the condition of the home and the genetic structure of the parents themselves, as to what genes will be made available to you that you may utilize in your physical form. So that you do choose your parents before you're born. Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Very well, thank you.
Consul, are you now prepared to give us your closing message?
If we could take one more question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. A major earthquake, the San Francisco earthquake, happened during a major sporting event, the World Series. Is there any significance that the earthquake occurred during the time when so many people were exposed to it?
Yes, very much so. Very, very much so. And to put it very point blankish, here in a land you have had mass destruction and a large proportionate loss of life, a great deal of hardship and sorrow, much loss of home. And what does your society think about in this time of hardship, devastation, and destruction? They think about something that has no real value to it at all. Sports. It's a sad commentary on society. A sad commentary on society. All efforts and thoughts should be on the helping of those who have been hurt, the families that have been separated and destroyed, the lives that have been shattered. But instead, the money mongers of your society will still promote not a sport, but an event of profit and monetary gain. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
This is a good example of what your society is like. A good example of what society has become. Does it have to stay this way? No. It can be changed overnight, in a wink of an eye. It can be changed with the next breath. Each of you can make a decisive change in yourself and in the world, in your consciousness and in the consciousness of mankind. The world can only experience light if each of you will allow that godly spark in you to shine forth, to brighten yourself and those next to you. And this godly light acts as a contagion. As one individual sees your light shine, this stimulates them to allow their light to shine. And eventually, all mankind can become abright with the divine that lies in each and every one of them. Regardless of how bad your world may become, regardless of how negative it may become, you're not doomed to that. None of you are. You can make changes in yourself that will definitely, absolutely influence others around you. And they in turn will be able to influence more. And that light, that godly attitude towards life, towards yourself, can grow and grow and grow until the entire world is a spiritual place, a heaven on earth, a new world, a new life. You don't need some highly evolved soul. You don't need us. All you need is to know that you can make a change in yourself and thereby begin to change the world. As we said earlier, it is not the wisdom that you have, it is not the knowledge that you have, it is not what you have that will make you spiritual, but it is what you are willing to do with what you do have that will make you spiritual, that will make you godlike, that will make you fulfill yourself, to resume your rightful place in the creation of creation, to again return to your godly state, so that you can once again experience that divine energy, that divine activity, so that this great creator, this Father, this infinite light, can take you in his arms and hold you to his bosom as a precious jewel, a wondrous gem, something of such great and such value that he could not be complete without it. This is your rightful place. This is what you are destined to, sooner or later, one way or another. You may fight your godliness all the way to receiving your crown, but it will be a battle in vain, for you are destined to be with that divine presence.
At this point, the council had completed their message and was preparing to give their final blessing. Suddenly, there was a loss of power, causing the lights to go out on the dais. After a few frantic moments, a spotlight from the back of the room was directed toward the dais so that the audience could view Mr. Lapar coming out of the trance state. Fortunately, one of the cameramen with a handheld camera was able to record the exciting conclusion of this event. Several months before this event, the Sol organization had inquired of the Council about the potential for problems. The Council said that there would always be the possibility of problems with so much electrical equipment in proximity to such a degree of psychic energy, and that Sol should be prepared for any eventuality. There was an unusual aspect to this loss of power in that the hotel manager stated that his chief electrician said that no breakers were tripped, and that the hotel had no reasonable explanation for the loss of power. Another unusual aspect was that the house lights were active and the cameras were active, although there was not sufficient light for the studio cameras to function. Everything had worked perfectly well until this moment when the Council was to give their closing salutation. Then the lights mysteriously went out and just as mysteriously came back on. Is it possible that this was a demonstration from the Council to show their presence?
With our closing remarks, we would like to repeat the blessings and the wishes that we have for each and every one of you. And that is this: may this infinite Father, this divine presence, may his light shine down upon you, around you, and within each and every one. We thank you.
Thank you, Constable. Everyone please just remain seated and quiet for a moment. The lights have gone out, and at this point the Council will be breaking the state of coexistence with Mr. Lapar. We would like you to have an opportunity to view everything that occurs as they break the state of coexistence. So we'll try and get these lights back so that you'll have a clear view as they break the state of coexistence. So we'll try and get these lights back so that you'll have a clear view. Okay, what we will do then, everyone can get a view, at least to a certain degree. The Council will now break the state of coexistence with Mr. Lapar. There will be a slight trembling of the body and the hands falling to the sides as the electrical system is returned to normal activity. This will be the exact moment that the Council leaves. We ask everyone please to remain seated until after Mr. Lapar has left the dais. The Council will now break the state of coexistence with Mr. Lapar. Thank you, Council. Mr. Lapar is coming out of the trance. However, he is disoriented. He remembers nothing from the time he left his room until this moment. His wife Nancy is talking to him to help him regain his orientation. She's asking him to please turn to the left side. As you can see, he still needs assistance since he's not regained his orientation. Nancy will now give him orange juice for quick energy, and when he returns to his room, he will be given additional nourishment and should be fully recovered in about 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you. We want to have a few brief announcements. One of those being anyone who would like to interview on
What was the highlight of the trance for you?
The whole thing, really. The calmness and peace of it was very significant to me. Definitely a feeling of peace and tranquility. Oh, I find it, I think I found it spiritually uplifting, very definitely. Very stimulating, too. It's very awesome. I think it enhances my attitude about life because
it's a beautiful feeling, it's a beautiful philosophy, and I just really enjoyed the entire trance. I think it's life-changing for many of us in this room today, for many of us. Very important, very important. I think we will all of us will walk out of here with a different philosophy of life, a more heightened awareness of what we are here for, what we are here to do.
I'd say you'd have to come and see it and come in with an open mind.
Was there a particular insight that you gained from the experience?
Many. I think it's opened our lives, my wife and mine both, a lot to be more open to helping people and doing the things that council says we all should be doing.
If you were to describe what you experienced today to a friend who had no idea about what was going on, how would you do that?
Very different. It's just something you have to try.
Yeah, it was just great.
Is this your first experience with a trance?
Yes.
Too bad this can't be plastered on the front page. I'll just tell them it's too bad they missed it, which is what I intend to tell my sister, because it certainly should be a life-changing experience. It's just super fascinating. Oh, I'm just completely fascinated. Tomorrow, the next day, more of it will come back, and it's like I have to sign up for next year, too.